I am your DM Bonny, and I'm glad to see you found your way back to Pokemon Cross D&D, a series where we'll explore story through character design pulling from two of my favorite obsessions. However, you must be wary, traveler, as there are spoilers ahead, so be sure to check out last week's session to get caught up on all the lore. Time began to slow around Curtis as he made eye contact with the entity trailing the VIP. The parade continued and the townsfolk were silent as the troops marched the procession along. Curtis looked around and his traveling party was gone. When he glanced back to the main street where he first caught the eerie eyes, he found there was no one there. "What's happening?" worried Curtis. The hair along Curtis's neck shot straight up as laughter echoed throughout the air. Instinctively, he swung his bone club behind him, but the weapon slammed against an invisible wall, the impact ricocheting him onto the floor. Slowly, the wall took on a tinge of violet as more of them began to surround him from every direction. He was trapped. Inside, the boy's vision of the outside was obscured, as if everything were blurry, but slowly, something was coming into focus. A figure began to walk towards him, trudging very curiously with a lanky gait. The walls of the box he was trapped in continued to close in on his little body as he finally began to make out what looked like bloodied, wrinkled fingers reaching out for his face. Mr. Mime, the Screaming Smile. The tales of Mr. Mime's victims are equally as gruesome as the stories that describe the creation of Cantona's infamous psychotic assassin. Mr. Mime, or Mime for short, was once a bright-eyed royal court jester. He currently operates as a retainer to the princess after being tortured into surrendering his will and becoming a living weapon for the king. Mime doesn't seem to speak, but is known for both an unnerving gaze and spine-chilling laugh that is able to stupefy his victims and create hallucinations within their minds. With incredible psionic prowess, he traps victims within boxes to prevent their escape and slices them up with surgical precision. Mime is a ruthless killer who operates out of fear of the king, and thus would do anything to protect his immediate master, the princess. It's thought now that when Mime laughs, he recalls his old days of being a comedian, and lost his sense of humanity years ago when the king decided his usefulness as a court jester ran its course. Let's take a brief moment to rest here, traveler. Here's this week's quest board, which has an all-new question of the day. Be sure to respond in the comments below. Which Pokemon would you task to be the rival to the hero you've established? Be sure to explain why and give them a backstory in the comments below. Curtis closed his eyes as the hand drew closer and nothing. He slowly opened them back and to his utter dismay, found himself standing beside Sasha and Saba. It was at that point when he noticed the procession come to a halt. The townsfolk quickly felt the silence and whispers floated in the air. "Mr. Mime! Is he the one?" A young girl dressed in impeccable regalia pushed through Team Bastion's grunt and found the group. Her eyes were fierce, in equal nature to the rest of her attitude, composure, and stature. The jester nodded, and Curtis stepped back. "A long time ago, Mime here made a joke that the court found distasteful. My father cut off his tongue when he realized Mime didn't need it if he couldn't be funny." Mime hunched over beside the girl, who began to scratch his head as if he were her pet. "There's no spirit behind his eyes now, so I trust what's left in him, which is just instinct. We were marching to Pewterton when we heard Viridian Tide's surrounding forest was burned to the ground. The crystal orb was seen in the area last, so imagine to my delight learning that you brought it right to me, and that I can just pry it right out of your cold, dead hands." Kirlia, the Will of the King. A young girl who has been living in the castle under the iron fist of the king, and presumed to be the heir to the throne. Confident and arrogant to a fault, she has been utilizing Team Bastion forces as proxy through her father. Kirlia is determined to retrieve the crystal orb as per her father's command, and moves with unbridled devotion. Kirin has been training all her life in martial prowess, although her passions range from singing, painting, dancing, and then some. As she's come into age to become the hand of the king, she was given an ancient heirloom in the form of a sword. Since then, she's been instilled with a renewed and startling sense of commitment to her father's cause, almost as if she were possessed. Kirlia will stop at nothing to make her father proud, and bring the royal family honor and prestige through whatever means necessary. Having finally found the freedom to leave the castle for her search for the crystal orb, she would rather die on the battlefield than return empty-handed. Partnered with Mr. Mime, her retainer, she is prepared for any challenge ahead. Kirlia pointed her blade at Curtis and company when an ominous wind began to spiral around her. From the gem on the crossguard of her sword, purple tendrils began to latch onto the blade. Mime began to laugh nervously and cast barriers around the party, forcing them all to be squeezed together in the space.
Jirachi, I need you,
called out Curtis. In an instant, the little fairy appeared.
I can see your wish in your mind's eye.
Instinctively, Curtis mirrored the same pose as Karen, extending his bone out towards her.
Your will is my command, called out Jirachi.
A great ball of flame erupted out of the end of the bone. Curtis's eyes grew wide as Mime jumped in front of the girl. Now's our chance to run, shouted Zasha. The party made haste as Mr. Mime, the mute, began screaming at the top of his lungs. Thank you, traveler, for joining me on today's adventure. Be sure to complete all of your tasks on the quest board before we set out on our next session. I've been Bonny, your DM and artist. Until next time, safe travels, traveler.